Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome you to our Tuesday, September 10th, 2024 Board of Education meeting. We are calling the meeting to order and it is 7 p.m. And if everyone could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. A reading of meeting notice. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of the public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provision of the Act, the Verona Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published in the Star Ledger, posted with the Township of Verona and the Verona Education Association. Postings of this meeting have been set forth. The time, location, and agenda were posted at the Verona Board of Education office and on the Verona Public Schools District website. Copies of tonight's agenda and resolutions have been made available to the public via the Board of Education website. Mr. Cruz, if you could please call attendance.
Present.
Mrs. Farrar,
Here.
Mrs. Rosella,
Here.
Mrs. Prisco,
Here.
Mr. Boone.
Here.
We have quorum. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to our agenda, I need a motion, please, to approve our minutes from our August 27th, 2024 meeting. Motion by
Motion.
Mr. Waka, seconded by Mr. Boone. Are there any discussions on routine matters? Mr. Cruz, if you could please call roll.
Mr. Walker,
Yes. Yes.
Mrs. Rosella,
Yes.
Mrs. Farrar,
Yes.
Mrs. Prisco,
Yes.
Mr. Boone.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on, this evening, we have Jean Cleary. She is our board rep from New Jersey School Boards. She's here to do our presentation on our self-evaluation that we took. Thank you for being here.
So it's a pleasure to be with you tonight. I am Jean Cleary from New Jersey School Boards. I am the newly assigned field service representative that will work with you and your board. I know you were very well served by Charlene Peterson, who is still with school boards. She is assigned to some other districts and special projects as a senior field service representative, but I'm sure you'll be crossing paths with her again. She sends her regards. I would like, for the benefit of the public, to just know that while it is not required for a board to do their self-evaluation, it is really considered a best practice. And it really goes towards assuring the public that you take your role as under governance very seriously. And I want to commend you for achieving a master board certification this past year. That's a reflection of all of your hard work and focus on continual growth. So over the summer, you did complete your board self-evaluation, and your summary is in front of you, and we can just go over that. So there are 9 indicators, and they consist of planning, policy, student achievement, finance, board operations, board performance, board and superintendent relationship, board and staff relationship, and the board and community relationship. This is all marked on a 4.0 scale, and planning came in at 3.6. Policy at 3.7, and the board has, for the benefit of the public who may be listening, has evaluated themselves under these categories and looking at these indicators. Student achievement, the board ranked itself at 3.7, finance 3.9, board operations 3.8, board performance 3.8, Board relationship, 3.9, board staff, 3.6, and board and community relationships, 3.5, with a total average of 3.7 out of 4.0 scale, okay? So the survey, the evaluation was completed by 4 of the 5 members, and the average score, as we said, was 3.7, with a range of 3.5 on board community relations to 3.9 for both finance and board superintendent relationships. I apologize, there's an error on your paperwork. So we're going to just take a look at what that means. So broken out over the different ratings, there are 57 indicators, total of 228 for the 4 board members that completed it. 166 commendables came in, representing 73% of the total. And good rankings were 59, representing 26% of the total, with only 1 not observed. Adequate and unsatisfactory really were statistically insignificant. So you came in just under 100%. So as we go down this by category, we're just going to look at the board is a high functioning board. And we want to just look at where you're at, the glow, we like to call it, and then look at opportunities for future growth to continue that on that continuous path of achievement. So under planning, a glow, something you should be proud of as a board, is that the board reports that you feel and there was agreement on this, that you're working collaboratively to set and meet the goals of the district. A recent strategic plan included opportunities for stakeholder input and with the community members, and is used as a guide for the board to move forward. The board is focused on meeting and setting actionable goals, which is very important, such as the Master Board certification, which you have achieved this past year. So a grow area would be that there was a comment on there that the board indicated that maybe more frequent review and progress monitoring of board goals would be helpful. Not uncommon where boards set goals with all good intent and the year gets very, very busy. So if there's not a schedule of when you're reporting out or holding yourselves accountable, sometimes it just gets a little bit lost in the shuffle. So sometimes having dates of reporting out that you hold yourself to can help keep everybody's focus on task. It's recommended that dates are set and shared to assist with maintaining the focus. So under policy, a glow area is that the board reports that it's working on updating the policy manual and members are familiarizing themselves with policies. So as a policy-making body, which the board is, it's good to see that everyone seems very committed, engaged, and informed about the need for policy review and for referring to policies to support decision-making as a board. So just point of fact, as you probably do know, that New Jersey School Boards does offer a service to review your policies. If you have any questions, we are a source for you. It's included in your dues, so I would encourage you to take advantage of that. If I can assist in any way, I will do that, but we have a department that handles that for you. Moving on to student achievement. The glow area, the board reports that student achievement is a standard focus of the board's work. The board supports district educational goals and requires regular updates and data from the administration for both accountability and to ensure progress. That is the work of the board, and the board seemed pretty, in agreement that that is happening with regularity. The board members acknowledged the receipt of data and feedback through assessments, but indicated that they may benefit from more training so that they can have a deeper understanding of some of the data and to allow for additional questions that they may have that would be educated based on that training. Looking next at finance, which was a high score of 3.9 shared with board and superintendent relationship. The glow reported is that the board reports feeling very well informed by administration and is committed to supporting the work in this area to support district goals. There's a concern regarding the anticipated growth of the district and how those needs will be met. Not uncommon, we're hearing that across the board in most districts that we're going into. A grow area would be that the board expressed the desire to gain a better understanding of upcoming budget challenges, recognizing that it is a tight budget. So that's just an area of growth and focus going forward. If we move on to board operations, the board reports a high level of respect, preparation, and collaboration while working together. There is a commitment to continuous learning and growth as both a board and as individuals. A positive climate of trust has been established and supports positive interactions with each other, with the administration and staff, which allows for the focus to remain on the issues that serve the students of the district. A grow area for this to go forward is just having accomplished the recognition of the master board certification. Training can be planned for attainment of the Carol E. Larson master board certification. To do that, the board needs to complete 10 more board credits before May of 2026. Student achievement is of course, always a focus, but that's specifically spelled out in that certification. But you can also bring in other training, any other training that you feel would help to support the board in future governance, anything you may just want to feel more educated on. So we can, there's a list in the back that I shared with each of you. So anything that you may be interested in that isn't on the list we can have a discussion to accommodate. Board performance, the board reports that there's a shared commitment to attendance and preparation for meetings, proper questioning to support oversight, maintaining the required confidentiality under the Code of Ethics, and proper interactions with the public. So you hold yourselves to a high standard to maintain the professionalism that's required of the board. A grow area would just be to continue to work on identifying different ways to communicate with the public regarding perhaps topical issues that come up during the year, and also to perhaps share with the public the actual functioning of the board. We often assume that the public is aware how a meeting is set up, and it's not really, Robert's Rules of Order really aren't on everybody's coffee table. So sometimes providing information in multiple ways on your agenda or on your website can support that, and you can refer people to that when there's question of why you're operating in a certain way. Next, we have the board superintendent relationship, which again was a high score of 3.9. The board reports a very strong working relationship with the superintendent and acknowledges that there's a shared commitment to review, revise, and implement policy procedures and best practices in the district. An area for development and support of members as they experience new topics could be a focus for both individual growth and continued positive development of the board. Boards are very regularly challenged with new topics that are coming up regularly, whether it's what to do with your cell phones or anything as schools open. So those discussions are important to have, and any resources we could provide for you, we're happy to do that. So board staff relationships, the board values collaboration with administration to best support staff in their efforts towards student safety and success. The work of revision and implementation of policy, establishing clear job roles and responsibilities, and fair accountability standards have been a priority to ensure that staff are in the best position for success. We do know the research shows that good governance, high functioning boards help have a direct positive impact on student achievement. And part of that is by the impact it has on the staff in the building that's closest to the students. Continued commitment to clear and fair engagement between the administration and staff, as supported by the board, as you are, will allow for fair accountability, which will positively support student achievement and outcomes. We all want to know that we're being evaluated, trusted, to the work that we do. So those interactions to continue positively as you have been doing will just grow that. And finally, we have under the section the board community relationships. The board reports that the community is very supportive of the school district and events and continues to explore ways to increase positive engagement with the community. The board participates in many events themselves, including cultural and student-centered ones. A grow area might be to explore proactive ways to address topics that concern the community in informal settings. We recognize that people aren't always comfortable to come into a board meeting, or it might not be the right um, place for certain discussions to happen. So providing opportunities for the public to come out and also to see the celebrations of all of the great accomplishments that you have going on in your district, whether at a board meeting to celebrate the accomplishments of students or staff, things like that can be very helpful. So we move on to the summary of major challenges identified by the board, concerns that you have facing the district. And these are not in any ranked order, just to be clear, it was just a list. Under administration, that there needs to be continued support and clarity of administrative roles and responsibilities for efficient operations. So when everybody is very clear, everything moves much more smoothly, and that benefits everyone. Building security and aging facilities. The budget, of course, is a concern. Retaining and hiring of highly qualified teachers, population growth in the community, and CTE providing alternate pathways for student success post-graduation, besides college planning. Summary of suggested areas of additional focus and training that the board had noted were under policy and procedural implementation and accountability. Um, Sometimes the policy is in place, but the regulations of how that actually appears in the district on a day-to-day, which is, of course, the superintendent's purview. But to make sure that things are aligned and clear for everyone. Effectively communicating with the community, crisis communication, planning, and public engagement, which has come up a couple of times. Overall, you report a very involved, supportive community. These are times that can be trying when certain things pop up and people show up at meetings, and we want those interactions to be as positive as they can be for everyone involved. So sometimes just troubleshooting different ways of putting information out so people are walking in feeling a little calmer to maybe be open to listening to the information that's available. And that is really the summary of your evaluation. We do have next just a quick look at the charts. The charts reflect the work that we just went over, but it's kind of a visual that's nice to have. The first one is, to me, less interesting. It's interesting, but less interesting. I think that if you go to the second one where you're looking at board to individual, so you're comparing the blue is how you ranked your board, and yellow is how you ranked yourself as an individual. And interestingly, there are many categories where you have first of all, across the board, the rankings are pretty uniform, suggesting that there's agreement that the board is doing very well and functioning at a high efficient level, but also that there are different categories where you're putting the functioning of the board slightly ahead of how you're even rating yourself, which is an indicator that you're open to educating yourself more, expanding your knowledge base, but everything is across the board in a pretty high place. So that's good news. And if you look at the last page, the current year versus the prior year when you did this, the gray is 2023 and the green is 2024. And it's very nice to see positive growth in all categories. So the board has definitely been working very hard to move forward in governance and is reporting the benefits of that. So that's all for your hard efforts. It's good to see, and your community can feel pleased to know of the commitment that this board has for ongoing learning, education, and taking the time to really be self-reflective and evaluative, which is really important. We ask that of our students, and it's important that we hold ourselves to a certain standard as well. In the back, you'll also have, just for reflection, some topics that might be of interest to you. I will also share that for those going to workshop, the agenda is posted. So all of the classes are there. If you want to get started looking at things that you may want to pursue when you're down there, we look forward to seeing you. And if you have any questions, please, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Jean, for coming out and for the report. Mr. Waka is going to be one of the presenters at school boards this year. So
Oh, lovely.
congratulations, Mr. Waka.
That's
We
wonderful.
will all be attending. We are actually a full board. All of us will be attending.
That is what we
This is
love
the
to
second
hear.
year in a row that the entire board will be at school boards. So I think it's they're great sessions. It's great to all to be together.
Yeah,
So-
and just, I'm not sure in the moment who may need to take any mandatory training to meet requirements. The only thing to keep in mind is, I don't believe it affects this board, is that, the governance one won't be held at workshop this year, just for future reference, just because it's outside the 90 days now that that's been imposed. And there are some changes to, Gov 2 and 3, so the topics will look a little different, and we think that that will help to serve board members as well. That was handled actually by our senior field reps, Charlene Peterson being one of them. So I think you'll find that interesting. All
And
right.
also we will discuss as a board as our topics for the next training. I know you and I had spoke on the
Yes.
phone about certain ideas
And
that
if-
we were talking about. So we'll discuss it and come up with some dates that we can get together for our next.
I was going to
training.
say that it would be helpful, even if you want to, if you as a board can agree on dates, if you send them to me, we can always fill in the category as we get a little closer,
Perfect.
but just to get onto the calendar would be helpful.
Great.
Okay?
Wonderful.
All right.
Thank
and
you so
good-
much for coming.
Good luck with the school year.
I
Oh,
do have.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Ms. Walker, you go ahead.
Oh, just so we talked about the evaluation. I was the one board member that did not fill it out, and I didn't fill it out last year or the year before that. And I won't fill it out in the next 3 years that I'm on the board. It has nothing to do with you, obviously. I just think it's not my ideal. I'm much more interested in evaluating our superintendent who we hired and we're very happy with, and evaluating her. But thank you for the plug, Pam. On Tuesday of the convention at 11 o'clock in room 404. That's the place to be. So get there early. You must get there early. But
Well, now-
also as
May
far
may I
as,
ask your topic?
oh yeah, it's effective collaboration between school districts and law enforcement. It's gonna be
Excellent.
a hit. But there's another one like very similar at the same time, which is weird, but ours is gonna be the cooler one. And then as far as, with the trainings, I definitely like, let's be honest, we're forced to be part of school boards, right? But the school boards does offer, value. So I'd like to be able to use them as provider for services, but they're not necessarily the only game in town. So I think we should also explore that as well. Thank you. And thank you.
Yes, of course.
Just 2 questions from me. Is there any value to compare results with samplings from like districts around the state?
That's it's an interesting question. I think that it may be hard to do in practice, actually. I think that there are so many nuances of issues before boards, some themes we're seeing for sure. But I think that frankly, not all boards are taking the time to do it, and it is a conversation starter for you as a board to have, and to give yourself an opportunity of what you need to be a better suited to what you want to learn, so that you can support the work. I'm sure there's value in it. I can go back and kind of get some thoughts about how that may look for 1 or 2 possible, but frankly, the information in it is really geared towards you as a board. So what there might be benefit in is actually, giving some thought to if there are other categories that you're not seeing on this that you think would be important to you as a board to take a look at. That's something that maybe we can look at modifying. So, it might speak to something that you're not seeing is being captured here, but that you may want to capture. That would be good feedback for us to have.
And relating to feedback, particularly from key stakeholders in our school administration, not maybe necessarily the superintendent, but from top administrators, is there any value into having an anonymous survey of what they see from the board, just to better take the temperature?
Yeah.
Mr. Ruth, if I could, I hate to jump in, but like our evaluation happens in election day. That's our evaluation. I just, our job is to evaluate her.
Correct.
And that's the only, I'm speaking just from my opinion, that's the only, the opinions are collectively that we give to assign her scores. That's what the community elects us to do.
Well, I was looking, yeah, and I don't disagree with that point. I think I was looking at it through the lens of maybe some of our top administrators don't necessarily live in districts, so they don't have that vote. And just, I'm looking at it as more of a pulse survey than necessarily an evaluation. But just to see, to hear what is top of mind of them, even though I know we're in very good relationship with our superintendent, but just another opportunity for them to feel like that they are being heard.
If I may, that is actually done by some districts, run very often through the superintendent's office to do a kind of even a climate survey. And some of the questions that could be on there may pertain to the board, right? But also how they feel about some other areas. So that is just information, and you can take that information and have that feedback to go forward with. I would say, respectfully disagree that when the board is clearly their main focus is to hire and evaluate the superintendent. But it does send a message and it does serve a purpose to be, and we can disagree, that's totally fine. We do find that boards that take the time to evaluate themselves are being a little bit more thoughtful about the governance that they're doing, a little bit more tuned into the community's will and concerning themselves with the feedback, right? So
That's subjective though. How do you measure more thoughtful? Or how do you measure more concerned? Like that's part of the problem. There's a lot of parts of the problem that I just philosophically disagree with. But
Okay.
I'm not sure I just trust on face value that research is true.
okay, well, you might want to look up the Iowa Lighthouse study, but that, yeah.
Boards believe that students are going to achieve, and that's the most important thing to have. Like I even wrote the Iowa study down here.
Right.
Okay, but you heard me though.
Yep, absolutely. I did. So yes, so that's what makes the world go around, is that there is a variety of opinions and that I'm not trying to change your mind. We as New Jersey school boards do find that when we have the opportunity to support boards in that way to be self-reflective, that also that can change the dynamics actually. And I know that you enjoy a strong relationship with your superintendent, but it can help to maintain good, strong relationships with administration, with the superintendent, because you're taking the time to kind of evaluate where am I, even from an educational point of view, what areas of those 9 different areas do I feel most comfortable in? That some people may have a strength towards the finances, or you might be on the policy committee and not really feel that comfortable with the reporting that you're receiving from, about finances, but you may benefit by that. So it helps us to direct how we can best support the board.
Understood, but the only administrators I'm going to work with are the superintendent and the BA. Like I don't have a relationship with any other administrators in Verona, and quite frankly, I think that's the exact right way to do it.
To your point is that, yes, the superintendent runs the daily operations of the district, right? So a board hires the superintendent and the superintendent is tasked with running the daily operations. So we are in total agreement on that. I think that this is not meant to get into the evaluation of individual staff. Everybody outside of the superintendent works for the board. Everybody else in the district works for the superintendent. And the board plays a role in making sure that there are fair evaluative measures in place, but it's really the work of the superintendent as the chief executive of the school district to maintain that. So I hope that's helpful.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Again for coming here. I'll be in touch, Jean. Thank you. Moving on to our agenda, we have our superintendent's report with Ms. Diane DiGiuseppe.
Good evening. Thank you, Jean. Chief Executive, wow. I just wanted to say that to start off that we opened schools with a great start. It's always, the summer comes at the same time every year. Summer is a very, very busy time in the board office. It went very quickly this year, while the end of August, beginning of September also comes at the same time every year. This year, it didn't feel like it was the same time. It really came quickly, but we were ready for it. And while I don't want to take any of Jack's, uh, you know, report, I know he will be reporting the student rep reports on, athletics and stuff. I do need to say Friday night's home opener was very special for me. When
Can you
we-
tell us why?
our home opener this year, we were able to um, play against Kinnelon Public Schools, Kinnelon High School, and we won in a fantastic contest, Verona. We had a great football game, great, excellent cheer presentation, and as always, our marching band. And they acted both as a pep band during the game, and they did a very small portion of their newest uh, choreography, and they were excellent. So very happy to see that, and that's all the only shine I'm going to take from you, Jack. I do want to point out, I did get some questions about the cell phone policy committee. I have every intention of putting that out. It's just we're in the process of every night this week, either here or at a back to school night. As soon as we open schools officially and get everybody oriented and all of that done, I will put that out. I mean, our procedures currently are that cell phones are not allowed in the schools. I think this idea of having a board policy is really more about bringing it to the forefront and addressing it across the board with buy-in from everybody. So having said that, I do want to visit just one small piece of it because I did have some people reach out to me after the tragic events at Appalachia High School in Winder, Georgia, and about the importance of cell phones. And I want to say that's not accurate. As a matter of fact, reports coming out of that school district are reporting that when students get on their cell phones, like as a parent, I would want my son to tell me they were okay. I totally understand that vibe as a parent. But when students are on their cell phones texting, they are not fully engaged in any safety directions they're getting from school administration, from first responders. Um, just in terms of when parents get texts from their kids during an emergency, whether it's some kind of a intruder on a school campus, whatever it is, and parents come to the district. Now that campus was huge, right? Our campus is not. Some of our smaller schools, I'm thinking about Brookdale, I'm thinking about if parents flooded those areas, first responders are not getting through. So there's really good reasons for students not to have cell phones during emergencies, even though our heartstrings say we want to know our kids are okay. They could impede a public safety response, as I said, and sometimes it accelerates the spread of misinformation, and not having kids on their cell phones can sometimes interrupt rumor control. So there's lots of good reasons, and this is put out by every school safety organization out there that says that's when kids should not be on their cell phones. Just wanted to have that conversation publicly because I think one of the main reasons that we reported last month, I'm sorry, that for those parents that didn't support a no cell phone in school or during, I don't want to say in school, no cell phones during class policy had to do with their students' safety and well-being. Okay, we also discussed at our last meeting the HBW office space dilemma that we have. So we discussed that we had a need for our fifth grade counselor to have appropriate counseling space to uh, work with her caseload. And it was proposed that Mr. Lancaster be moved out of the counseling suite so that Mrs. Ramirez can be allowed to take that space, converting that wing to primarily school counseling. I mentioned that Mr. Lancaster does assign consequences. That's discipline is part of his role as assistant principal. And it isn't a best practice to be assigning discipline in an area that's designed for counseling. So we decided that we were going to be looking at multiple spaces to see where we could find for Mr. Lancaster to be able to do his job effectively, as well as get him out of the counseling suite and find a space for our counselor to work with our students. So that was the hard part, finding adequate space for Mr. Lancaster. We had looked at, I think, 7 or 8 different spaces, and last month, staff and community members expressed concerns about the potential use of space from the existing media center to accommodate his office space. The space proposed by the director of facilities in the media center would not, we mentioned that several times, would not have infringed on any space currently used by students. Board members, Mrs. Farrar, Mrs. Brazella, and Mrs. Prisco toured with Mr. Lancaster and Mr. Galbachek that space, and I believe you're in agreement that that would not have been a space that would be removed from student use. Having said that, it's unfortunate that people came out because of a misinformation campaign and they were not informed. But having said all of that, talking to Mr. Bugliateri about his long-term plans for revamping some of the poorly designed spaces that we currently have at HBW in the first floor main office building, it would be my recommendation to forego the cost of putting an office in the media center, simply because it would be a temporary fix, and I think it's an expensive temporary fix. So we are going forward with one of the other locations, and hopefully in the revamping of the main office in the next few years, we can move Mr. Lancaster back down into that space and utilize a redesigned main office. So we're going to be reconfiguring the timeout room on the second floor, which is actually a decent spot for Mr. Lancaster because it happens to be right by the boys' bathroom that has a lot of shenanigans happening in there. So he can kind of keep one eye on the boys' bathroom and hopefully reduce some of the stuff that happens in there. So it would be my recommendation to the board that we retrofit the timeout room as a temporary solution until we can refit the main office to include a conference room and office space, other office spaces. Okay, back to school nights. Tomorrow night we have Lanning, and that's a change. Lanning was supposed to be the week of the 19th, I believe, or the week of the 17th, I'm sorry. It is tomorrow night at 6:30, FN Brown on the 12th. We have Forest Avenue on the 17th, HBW on the 19th, Brookdale on the 25th, and the high school on the 26th, all starting at 6:30. We look forward to welcoming our parents to the schools. It's always a fun night. Our building academic goals will be reported on at the September 24th meeting. Principals are actively working on developing those currently. And I am going to share my screen. Can I do that? Are you ready? Okay. Because we have the SSDS annual report. It's short, I promise. So each year, biannually, I have to report on the student safety data system, which looks at things like suspensions and substances, HIB, fighting, and other altercations that we have to report, and violence and vandalism that we have to report to the state of New Jersey. I report after the first reporting period, which runs from July 1 through December 31st. And this is both the report of the second reporting period, which goes from January 1st through June 30th, as well as an overview of the entire year. So for reporting period 2, Verona High School had 20 total incidents, 5 alleged HIB, which means they were investigated as HIB but not confirmed as HIB, and 4 that were investigated and confirmed to have violated the HIB policy and law. We also have a category that was first time reported on last year. This is a preliminary determination, which was alleged to be an HIB, an active HIB, and then, so what our principals have the ability to do within our policy is, if they assume that all of the facts as stated are true, if it doesn't meet the burden of HIB law, they don't investigate it as HIB. So that's what preliminary determination is. So we had 5 reports of HIB that even if 100% of what was said was true, it still doesn't meet the legal definition of HIB. They were probably all investigated as code of conduct violations. There were 2 fights at the high school, no other incidents leading to removal of a student. And what that tends to be is if we have a student that is insubordinate and winds up being suspended, that would be in that category. We didn't have any violence or vandalism in the second reporting period at the high school, and we had 4 students that were confirmed either through having a substance on their person, testing positive for a substance, or refusing to be tested. So if you're a refusal, that's an automatic positive. So we had 2 of those. At Whitehorn, we had 16 total incidents, 3 alleged HIB, 3 confirmed, 4 that were not initiated, 5 physical altercations, no students removed for other incidents, and 1 incident of violence, no substance abuse. And then the elementaries, we had no incidents at all. At Lanning Avenue School, we had 3 incidents of restraint, and not seclusion. Restraint is when we have students, we have to report on students with a student with disability when we have to restrain them. We have to, and this is a safe restraint. So we had 3 incidents of safe restraint at Lanning Avenue. For the end of the year data, so this includes what I reported in reporting period 1, there were 41 total incidents at Verona High School, 33 total incidents at Whitehorn, and no incidents at Brookdale FNB. We had 2 alleged HIBs at Forest Avenue and 1 more restraint at Lanning Avenue. So that is the SSDS end of year report and reporting period 2 report for 2023-24. Any questions?
I don't have any questions on that report, but thank you. I just want to touch upon the HBW library. When we toured it the next day, when we went in, Ms. Bradell and Mrs. Ferrara and I think all left there even more shocked because everything that was spoken that night at the meeting was all false information. So no books were getting removed. The space was
Tangential
it was
to anywhere
so
students are.
it was
yeah.
very, very upsetting. False information, the hysteria that came out from that, which for the start of school was not what we really wanted. So I'm very disappointed that that's how it all happened, and that's all I have to say.
I was mostly for the students who were concerned that it was going to be taken away from them, but also when we went in, I in fact noticed, I in fact noticed there is a tremendous amount of space that seems to be completely wasted. I was shocked to see those tables
It could be reconfigured.
could be
yeah.
reconfigured. There could
Yeah.
be such, it was, so I actually walked away thinking, wow, I'm surprised that this isn't all used, even if for a gallery on the walls. I mean, it's such a nice open wall and it's just tables.
And I mean, if eventually, space-wise, right, when we have to make more classrooms for the students that are going to be coming into district, we may need to make some space from the media center. So, I understand people are upset, but we're not going to take anything away from the children.
No.
That's for sure. So,
And I do think also, and this is for all of us, right? Change is inevitable. And as we grow as a district and as we have greater needs, there is going to be change that's going to happen. I don't know right now what it is, but I do know that it's coming, right? This is not only in Verona, this is across the state, it's across the country. So I think also as a community, we have to recognize that it is coming, that we are going to do the best that we can as a board. I believe Ms. Giuseppe is, and as a community to embrace the change and do the best that we can with what we have. And to protect our children in that process so that they're not worried that any type of change is going to so greatly impact them, when in fact it may not. It's just a shift.
I mean, to follow that up and at least try to put an additional positive note on it too, is I applaud the response that everybody had, the fact that we looked into seeking alternatives and the focus on that. But the community showed to me, despite the fact that it was misinformation, that they deeply care about our
absolutely.
children. And I just
Absolutely.
want to
That's-
applaud.
That's
Yeah,
who we are.
absolutely.
I think,
Right.
as a community.
Yeah,
That's
and I
yeah.
want to give them, you know, there were some courageous young students that
Yes.
spoke, and I
Absolutely.
want to really make sure we
Yeah.
recognize the passion, even, you know, even if it's just us talking amongst ourselves, people deeply care.
And to be
that
clear,
makes me proud.
I encourage that. I don't think
Absolutely.
decisions should ever be made in a vacuum. I think that it's really important to hear all perspectives, all ideas, all of that. But really more what I'm saying is just that as a community, we have to recognize too that change
Absolutely.
is going to come. So we have to also kind of take that into consideration as well. But I encourage that.
Yeah.
And I just want to just speak up a little bit. I think that the five of us sometimes disagree on things. I think that's inevitable. But I will say, I think the one thing that not the one thing, one of the things that we all agree upon is that books belong in a library. No one would ever do anything that would intentionally remove books
Well, look
from
at
a
what-
library. No, I mean, yes, but but even looking at this, if we had to take away those shelves, there are plenty other places to move books. Moving books is not removing books. And I think we can say that over and over again. One of the things when I went to look was like, can we really move these books to other spots? Are there and yes, there were.
Right.
There were plenty of space to move these books that we were talking about potentially moving to another location within the same library. Like I said, I think the five of us can wholeheartedly agree that books
Absolutely.
belong in libraries and students have access to them. And that's really it.
One other thing before we move on, I want to commend Superintendent Di Giuseppe also on the welcome school email. It had a notion, and I'm calling this out just to make sure that everybody in our community is aware of it and didn't overlook it among the deluge of emails. There in that email was something talking about safe homes in terms of how parents, how families should teach gun safety in their homes if they choose to have a gun, how to secure those guns, information on the dangers of guns in the home relative to suicide situations, and just how to be a safe home if you choose to have a weapon. And I really encourage everybody to look at that email again and take a special look at that section. It's very important that you do so.
I'll actually link that welcome back webpage to our homepage because it's important information. This was the second year we put it out as a welcome in my welcome back package because when Governor Murphy signed the carry conceal law in New Jersey, there was a rapid spike of applications for carry conceal. So we know there's a decent number of families that have guns in the home. Just securing them. I mean, this is not an anti-gun statement. It's just let's know how to secure our guns so our kids don't get a hold of them.
Thank you. Moving on to our committee reports. We only had, I'm sorry. Sorry, Jack, I didn't mean to skip our student representative report from Mr. Jack Latson.
All right, so with the start of the school year, there's obviously a lot going on here. On Monday, September 2nd, which was the night before school started, the senior class met in the parking lot for senior car painting. The event was a huge success. And then the next morning, we all woke up early and headed to Eagle Rock Reservation for the sunrise. Last week, most of the fall sports started up. We're off to a good start this season, and I'm looking forward to continue going to games. In fact, we have 4 teams who are going into the season with undefeated records thus far. Both football and boys soccer are 2-0, and girls soccer and field hockey are 3-0. Some sports senior nights are also coming up soon. Girls tennis senior night is tomorrow, and most of the other sports senior nights will be at the end of the month and in the beginning of October. This morning, the freshmen and sophomores who are currently enrolled in Algebra 1 and Geometry took MAP testing. Next week, on Tuesday, September 17th, there will be a club fair taking place on the upper field of the high school for new students to learn about the various clubs we offer at VHS. And then the last thing I have is that campaigns for student council elections have begun. Speeches and voting will be occurring next Friday, September 20th. So that means that at the September 24th board meeting, there will be a new student representative here. It's been a pleasure, and I want to thank you all for being so welcoming.
Thank you,
Thank you
Jack.
so much.
Thank you, Jack.
I love the morning sunrise.
Yes.
celebration. It was the only thing that could get my kids up out of bed early.
Yeah, that's really great. And thank you for reporting out on to athletics because that's what we're moving on to right now. Did anyone have any questions for Jack?
I just want to, maybe to add to Jack's thing, tomorrow morning at HBW, will be the 9/11
Memorial.
memorial. And I know the HBW students come out for that and, it's,
Our students, musicians perform as well.
it's excellent.
Yeah, that's at 8:45 tomorrow. So moving on, thank you, Mr. Boone, on that. Moving on to our athletics committee, Mr. Wacko, would you like me to?
You don't even have to ask anymore.
Thank you. Thank you. So basically, Jack talked about all our sports that started up and Mrs. Di Giuseppe spoke about the football game. And we have our girls freshman volleyball team started. So that's new. They had their first game today. So looking forward to watching those girls. Let's see, our Fall Leadership Summit took place on August 27th. It was mostly juniors and seniors that attended. There were 19 students held at West Essex High School. David Tyree was the guest speaker. Did I get that right, Mr. Waka?
Right, although we were questioning that you didn't know who David Tyree was,
I didn't
but we
hear.
established we're both Jets fans, so it's okay.
I didn't hear the name properly, but I know who he is, so. Let's see, and that's it. I think, there really wasn't much. It was a very short agenda, so good luck to all our sports teams. We have over 300 students involved in our sports programs, so good luck to all of them on a great season. It's a lot. And then moving on to public comments on agenda action items only. If there's anyone from the public that would like to speak on something we will be voting on, please come to the podium. You must state your name and you have 3 minutes. Seeing none, moving on to discussion items and new. Mr. Walker, are you going to the podium? Okay. New business, old business. Is there anything that anyone needs to report out on? New business, old business? I just, I attended today the HBW. It was the high honor roll ceremony for the current 6th graders, last year's 5th graders. So tomorrow there's some.
Monday.
Oh, okay. Thursday. Okay, so congratulations. It was nice to see all the kids getting the awards. And I think Mr. Boone spoke about the 9/11 ceremony tomorrow at 8:45 at Town Hall. Anyone else? No. Are there any correspondence? All right, moving on to our resolutions. I need a motion, please, to approve personnel resolutions A1 through A8.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Waka, seconded by,
Is there 8 or 10?
I see 10.
I see 10.
you see 10?
Just 10.
on mine.
Oh, that may be
Oh.
updated.
Yeah,
Oh, because she didn't change it here.
Yeah.
Extra page.
Okay, she didn't see it here. Okay, sorry.
No, I just wanted to make
Thank
sure.
you. A1 through A10. Motion by Mr. Waka, seconded by
no,
Mrs. Brazala. Are there any discussions? Seeing none, Mr. Cruz, if you could please call roll.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Rosella?
Yes.
Mrs. Farrar,
Yes.
Mrs. Prisco,
Yes.
Mr. Boone.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to our education resolutions. I need a motion, please, to approve resolutions B1 through B4.
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Ferrara, seconded by
And, no,
Mrs. Frizella. Any discussions?
I just have a question on B3. Do we have an estimate on the as needed, for the school year?
We don't. This is just, we currently use, like an, swing. Who else do we use for, I'm sorry.
So we have swing and then also we have, I believe it's,
I'm drawing a blank too.
It'll always be as. needed.
Vanguard. Isn't, no, not Vanguard.
Won't it
Right.
always be as needed because we can't anticipate what the needs are of the kids?
Right, we have no
Sure,
idea
yeah.
what the as needed is, but
But
we have 3 agencies. This is just an additional agency.
I guess maybe the better way for me to ask the question is, in years past, what,
Right.
what is the need and do we project from that?
We have had a much larger need over the past 2 years. I can't speak to prior, my starting here. Our need is, at its lowest point now for agency, paras. Because we have hired, you've noticed in the past 2 board meetings, we've hired a significant number of paraprofessionals, that are working for Verona schools versus, an agency. But we, as I reported last month, we are not fully staffed with paras. And, I don't know how many, you might know how many.
so the other provider is Stepping Stones.
Stepping stones, right? Thank you.
And even with these, we're still not gonna, it'll help a little bit, but like,
Right.
they don't even have people half the time.
Right.
Mr. Cruz, if you could please call roll.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Frizella? Mrs. Farrar?
Yes.
Mrs. Prisco?
Yes.
Mr. Boone?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to our athletic and co-curriculars resolutions. I need a motion, please, to approve resolutions C1 through C3. Motion by
I'll move it.
Mrs. Frizella, seconded by
I'll second.
Mr. Boone. Are there any discussions?
Yeah, just, again, I'm sorry to keep tripping on, some of the minutia here. On C1, can we describe, and I'm not arguing against it by any stretch, but what do we mean by saying the board is not charged? So this is coming out from parent contributions? Is that how I'm to read?
Pay to play.
It's pay to play. Yeah, they're raising money and paying, to reimburse the board for expenses incurred for the cost of the coach and, any other expenses that the freshman team needs.
Mr. Cruz, if you could please call
Wait, I
roll.
just have one,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
sure.
one
No, no.
quick- About the stipend positions in the co-curricular, we are definitely keeping track of how many kids are involved in clubs, when these clubs are meeting.
As a matter of fact, Mr. Cogdill today, at least at the high school, I had to check with Mr. Galbercheck, put every club into Genesis, and Genesis they'll be keeping track of attendance and meetings in Genesis.
That is
Okay.
cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cruz, if you could please call roll.
Sure, for resolution C1 to C3. Mr. Walker?
Yeah.
Mrs. Frizella?
Yes.
Mrs. Farrar?
Yes.
Mrs. Prisco?
Yes.
Mr. Boone?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. There's no resolutions on for facilities. Moving on to our finance resolutions. I need a motion, please, to approve resolutions E1 through E2.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Boone, seconded by
I'll second.
Mrs. Ferrara. Are there any discussions? Seeing none, Mr. Cruz, if you could please call roll.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Frizella?
Yes.
Mrs. Farrar?
Yes.
Mrs. Prisco?
Yes.
Mr. Boone?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to our governance and policies. I need a motion, please, to approve resolution F1.
So
Motion
moved.
by Mrs. Rosella, seconded by
Seconded
by Mr. Boone. Are there any questions? Seeing none, Mr. Cruz, if you could please call roll.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Frizella?
Yes.
Mrs. Farrar?
Yes.
Mrs. Prisco?
Yes.
Mr. Boone?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to our public participation portion of the meeting. Anyone from the public wishing to speak on any matter, please approach the podium. Once recognized, you must state your first and last name for the record. You have 3 minutes to address the board. There will no cross dialogue during this public portion. If there is a question that can be answered, only the superintendent, board attorney, or board president will respond and will do so at the end of the comments. You will be granted 1 time to speak, and there's a total time of 1 hour for public participation. Again, please note there will be no back and forth, and we request that you please remain respectful. Thank you. Anyone from the public wishing to come up? Seeing none? Thank you. Moving on to, I need a motion to adjourn our meeting. Motion by Mr. Waka, seconded by
I'll second.
Mrs. Ferrara. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Our next board meeting will be held next Tuesday, September 24th, beginning at confidential at 6 p.m., public session at 7 p.m. in the Verona School Learning Commons. All in favor? Oh, we did that? We did that? All right. We're adjourning. It is 8:01 p.m. Have a great night.